Hello and welcome to Conversations with Creatives. My name is Esther Stanford and today I am joined by the Ruddy Marvel, who is Kia Pegg, BAFTA nominated, RTS winning actress and BBC presenter. Now, I've known Kia since she was about 7. That was the first time I met her. And I have to say, she was highly intimidating and everything I wanted to be. I was in my early 30s, maybe she was a bit older than 7, and she was auditioning for a BBC film starring Helena Bonham Carter that was about the life of the chef Nigel Slater, and she was so sort of straight to the point, self-assured. Yeah, it's just an audition. Went in, nailed it, and I thought, I'm going to take a lot from you, kid. And she stuck in my head because she was far more confident than I was. And I worked with Kia again a few years ago. I wrote a short film and we were in it together and we played mother and daughter. And I adore Kia. She is so intelligent. Her brain works at 1,000,000 miles an hour. She's incredibly sensitive and empathetic, and she's just glorious. She's just a nice person to be around. She's got a lovely energy, and I love working with her. And I'm sure a lot of you are here today because you are fans of Kia's. I know she's got a huge fan base and following, and I don't think you will be disappointed by this conversation. We cover a lot. We're both we like a chat together, put it that way. So I hope you enjoy. We join the conversation. I have to refer to my notes, what I'd actually asked her before we went into this conversation. And the question I'd asked her was, how do you find peace as a creative?
I don't. I
Does your
don't
mind ever
really,
go quiet? No.
no. And if it does, it's not normally a good thing. Like, if it goes completely quiet, like, that's normally a very bad indicator of, like, where I'm at
Yeah.
with something. So yeah, not really at all. In fact, it's probably no, that's not true. The quietest my mind ever is when I'm insanely busy.
Yes.
So, like, when I was doing like, if we go back, like, 3 years when I was doing the like, at the same time, I would be doing Doctors, Mashup. I would try and squeeze in other odd jobs for things like BAFTA and prayers, and I would try and fit those in. And then there was a point where there was 6 weeks when I was doing those 4 things and filming Dumping Ground. And that was probably the quietest my mind's ever been in my
But
life.
so do you think it's busyness that quietens your mind, or do you think it's
Yeah.
sort of but not small talk busyness, like being creative and busy, or do you
Yeah.
think yeah.
Yeah, so, like, I've spoken to you. I don't really talk about writing much, but I love to write, and I write all the time. My mum says I treat it like a dirty secret, the fact that I write, which I do. But I only write when I'm not doing other so, like, if I'm working, if I'm acting, or if I'm if I've got something on the go a lot of the time, I don't write then, and it's almost I always think it's almost like not bled out because that's not a nice phrase, but it's almost like all my creativity is
Yeah.
working, and then it gets stored. But then if I've got a few days off or whatever, it all gets stored up, and then I write, and it's like it needs somewhere to
It needs
go
somewhere
all
to
the
go.
time.
It needs to be exercised, doesn't it? It needs to
Yeah,
be I remember once years ago doing a film. My kids were quite little, and I just really wanted to. Well, my dad's from a place in Whitstable in Kent called Whitstable in Kent, and I really wanted to go down there and just spend a week there as me. He doesn't live there, and then I got cast in this film, and it was for filming for a week in Whitstable in Kent, and for that entire week, I slept for 17 hours because I was so excited to be there. I remember rapping one night on set and going, "Can I just stay?" And I sat with the makeup lady in the caravan. Now, if you told me normally going about my day-to-day life, you are only going to have 17 hours sleep this week, I would say you were mad. But I came back so charged from that, and then quite depressed for a while afterwards, back
yeah,
to normality. And
yeah,
it's almost like if you're busy but you're doing things that are creative and stimulating, but not small talk and not like mundane stuff, then it's almost like there's an overload of ideas and energy in the brain. Is that how you
yeah,
find it?
yeah, 100%. Like, There was 1 year at doctors where doctors are a very full on job. It was like 46 weeks of the year, long days. I was a receptionist, so I was in the most of the actors in that show. Like the receptionist bore the brunt of the schedule, which I quite liked. None of the others did, but I liked it. Um, and then we had 6 weeks off for Christmas or whatever, and I wrote loads and loads and loads. And I realised I hadn't written anything for the past year. I'd had a really busy end of the year, that series. Like, I've literally been in relentlessly to the point where, like, the scheduler had said to me, you could work here for 10 years and you will never have it like this again. Like, it was like, even for doctors, it was unusual, the amount that I had to do for a few weeks. And then it immediately stopped. And it was like my brain went, well, we've got to do something. Come on. Like there's got to be, you've got to do something. And I wrote all over Christmas, went back to work, stopped for months because it was like I had enough to do. My brain had enough to run on. So I tend to write a lot more when I'm out of work. And I do think it's because my brain's not getting what it craves.
Yeah, it's like creative stimulation, isn't it? Do you find that you're somebody who's quite awash with ideas?
Yeah.
Yeah. And no, I did this test with a woman who is actually going to come and talk to me on this, called Hannah, and it's called the Clifton Strengths Test, and it talks about we've all got 33 strengths. It was devised in the 30s, and the test is that like if you do a test normally, and it's like, if you see a dog, would you kick it or would you stroke it? And everybody goes, well, I'm going to say I'm going to stroke the dog because I don't want to be labelled this, even if you hate dogs, which I don't. I'm a massive dog lover. But this test, there's no preferable answer. Like, they're both good answers. So you work out who you are or what your natural skills are and what comes towards the bottom. And in my top 10 was ideation, and it was all like that kind of, and she talked about the shadow side of that is sometimes that will go into overdrive and you can't switch it off. And the way I describe it is, it's like my foot stuck on an accelerator and
I've always said it's like a merry-go-round.
Yes. Yeah, and you
can't.
can't. And so you've got to write, you've got to get it
Which
out.
is why I think also because I get like quite a lot of anxiety and stuff when I'm not working. When I'm working, it's fine, to be honest. I don't really like struggle with anything like that when I've got a job. But when I'm not working, I do like really struggle with it. And again, I think it's because my brain starts inventing things. Like, and it starts inventing things for me to think about. So I once described to someone who was like, that's really dramatic. And it is. However, however, it is also, for me true. Which, as I said, when I'm not working, it's like my brain starts eating itself.
Yes.
And
Yes. I totally understand that. And like sometimes I can't do the basic stuff is boring the hell out of me. And making small talk, going to a party and having to stand there and how are you? Yeah, how are you? Yeah. I mean, I did think about it.
I will say it's one of the reasons that I've been really getting on with my new agent. So I've only been with her since November. And one of the reasons that, because I went to a few different meetings, you know how it goes. And they were all, listen, I met some really nice agents, people that I would have really liked. And then Lucy was the last one that I went to see. And I came out of that meeting desperate for her to offer it, which I hadn't with the others. The others I've been like, they're really nice and I really like them. And obviously I did want them to offer me like representation. But with her, I was like, oh my God, like that's who like, it was a real thing. And then as soon as I signed with her, which also she kept me waiting a week, which I thought was a no, she'd gone to get married.
Oh, selfish.
She'd gone to get married. So when she emailed me to say, I'd really enjoyed meeting you, I'd like to offer you representation. She was like, sorry, it's taken me so long to get back to you. I was getting married. I was like, you're joking.
You could have given me that as a heads up. I might be a little while because I'm getting married on Thursday.
But one of the things that we really get on about is so one of the first things she did when she started, she was like, would you be interested in making documentaries? I was like, yes. She was like, yeah. She was like, I got that vibe from you, I'm really into like research and stuff, but also love chatting, presenting, and then she said, come up with a few ideas. And I took that like very seriously. And in 45 minutes, and I thought this is what she wanted, by the way. In 45 minutes, I sent her a document that had, I think, about 9 ideas on it. But then but it wasn't just like a title. I wrote a paragraph for each one to explain like why I wanted to do it, why it was interesting, and like, you know, a little bit about that subject. And she rang me and was just like, what on earth? She was like, yeah, this is not what I meant. This is brilliant. And she was like, because we got this meeting with the production company the next week. And she was like, let's not tell them most of this because like you've just come up with it so fast. And then, you know, a couple of other things like that where she said, do you have any ideas for this? And I've gone, yes, and then done it. And then I was at like a networking thing that my agency does once a year a few weeks ago. And again, I thought this was quite normal. I've not realized that not everybody's brain does that until literally very, very recently, because I was at this networking thing in March and she introduced me, and everyone she introduced me to, she was like, of any client I've ever had, Kia comes up with the most ideas the quickest, and they're actually interesting. She's not just saying random things. She was like, she's my favorite person to call in terms of creativity because she'll come up with things really fast. And I was like,
And you
I
didn't
thought
know that
that's,
was a strength. You didn't know
I
you were the
thought,
one that was like that.
no, I thought that's just what people did.
Isn't that invaluable, though? I think it's so interesting to understand that about yourself because somebody said to me once, you think that what you think there are people that will think your gifts are special, but to you they're just ordinary. And so to hear her say,
Yeah.
oh, like this, she has the most ideas and they're good ideas and she's quick and it's
Yeah, it was
really
really
affirming
lovely.
and great to understand that about yourself.
She's really cool. And then, yeah, and so like, we get on very well. So like I sent her these ideas and then by the end of the night, she'd sent me a documentary and research articles that she's found. So yeah, it's been really nice. I think like creatively joining this new agency and being represented by her has been like a really big thing for me, because my old agent was great, don't get me wrong, but looked after me much more as an actor, whereas Lucy looks after me as both. And the presenting side, I think, does give you more room for creativity, because normally as an actor, you're acting somebody else's work, which is great. I mean, love it. Would love to do it more. But as a presenter, you're kind of given a lot more free reign on, well, do you have any ideas, or what would you like to do? What are you interested in? Um, and so having somebody ask me those questions and say to me, well, can you think of something that would work for this? I've heard this brief. Can you think of a way that you could do it? Even when they're just like a mental game of going, well, can I? Has been a real like treat for me over the last few months.
And I think the thing is, I remember years ago when I was doing a lot of acting, somebody said, I met this woman on the beach down south and she said, well, she was a makeup artist on set. And I said, oh, I'm an actor. And she said, oh God, no, nothing worse because you're just a puppet. And actually, that was the one thing I found when I first got my agent. We were both part of ITV Workshop, obviously slightly many years apart, because I'm slightly older than you. But I loved being in that environment because you were creating and you were part of the team. But then you go on
Actually,
doing parts here and there, and you know, a couple of episodes of EastEnders or whatever, and it's just there's no mental fulfillment.
Actually, I was going to say to you, do you think workshop is a huge part of it? Because for me, I think that was where it really started. So like, one of my favorite like childhood memories, I suppose, was we in the under 11s at workshop. I think only the Saturday group did it actually. Ian Smith tasked us all with writing our own play, and we had to write it ourselves. Like he didn't want anyone to get any help from their parents. Like you had to write this little play yourself, and then it was a really good creative exercise actually, because he had us as the under 11s writing these plays. Which, when you've got kids that are creative, which you know all kids at workshop are, writing their own plays, we were coming up with like, I remember one boy wrote a play about just two boats that passed each other, but the play was about boats. And then he took those plays, took our names off them, and gave our little handwritten bits of paper to the 11 to 16s, who then got split into smaller groups and had to stage these plays.
God, that's
And they had to
brilliant.
stage these plays that these children had written, which obviously some were much easier than others. I've just told you one child wrote a play about boats. And like, you like, they were some of them were hard. And also, you know what the basement was like. Limited resources. We don't have scenics in. Like, you just got to go in a cupboard and see what you can find. And with a bit of imagination, turn that into play. He then did a night where all of our plays were put on. And the 11 to 16s, obviously, they didn't know which kids had written which plays. They then voted on their 3 favourite plays. And we all got, the 3 of us that won, got a small trophy. And it was things like that. I think that is such a good example of why workshop is so different, because I can't think of any other acting class in the country that's getting under 11s to write whatever they want with no limitations, and then making a group of 11 to 16-year-olds put that on. Yeah. And I think things like that at workshop, we were constantly being encouraged to not only act, but to write and to stage and to think in ways that I think particularly children's acting groups don't always encourage kids and teenagers to do. A lot of them you go to learn to act, whereas
Yeah.
workshop you were taught actually to be creative in so many ways.
And you had autonomy, didn't you? You had agency. You were allowed to, to be given that, write a play. We will stage your play. And I think when I finished the workshop and I got an agent and I went straight out and I did it straight off the bat, I did quite a lot of telly, but at the end of the 90s, loads of mainstream telly. But I was instantly just like, vroom, what, this is the world of being an actor. I'm not. Where's the community? And we're not just dissecting
Well,
things and working things
that's
out.
why I loved Doctors so much. Not because we dissected things and worked things out. We didn't do a lot of that. But there was a real sense of community and there was a real sense of play.
Yeah.
We were all given free reign, really, over what we did. As long as you're not changing medical terms and you're not like inventing ways of doing like actual doctor things, we were given real free. I mean, one of the very first things I was told on that job, bearing in mind I was 21, I'd done 11 years of kids' TV, which in many ways is a plus, but not everybody sees it that way. Lots of people would hear 11 years on kids' TV and not be thrilled at what they might presume that actor's going to be like. I was younger than everyone in it. The next youngest after me was like roughly 10 years older than me. So I was like, there was quite a big age gap. And one of the very first things I was told was, oh, if you don't like any of the lines, like just change them. And so we were given a real sense of like, it took me a long time to build up to being brave enough to do it. But once I got that, we were all, but you will watch it and I can tell you what's scripted and what isn't, like based on the way people do it, because we were given such free reign to add things in and to, so like one of the things, and I've spoken about this on other things, but one of the things that I decided really early on was Scarlett was meant to be, like annoying. Like annoying to the people that she worked with, but not annoying enough that she was disciplined or sacked. She just had to be like low-level irritant because it didn't affect the storyline. So it was never, it couldn't be something that she did that should have been referenced by other people. So I needed like low-level, just things that were like, oh, she's just a bit irritating. And I made a list, and the one that I went with was putting my feet on the furniture all the time. Because I was like, that's annoying, but not annoying enough that she could be caught out as it. And so I started doing that. And on my first, maybe second day at the mill, I put my feet up like this on the desk. And the one first AD went, Jan and Sarah don't sit like that, who were the other 2 receptionists at the time. And I was like, no, I know. And nobody ever, I was just allowed to do it. And they thought it was fun. And I was like, they built it in. And so, and everyone, I'm not saying I was being led by example. Everybody had their little quirks and things that they came up with for their characters. So I used to put my feet on the table, but there was one doctor who I never ever did it in front of because her character would have told me off 100%. So I never did it. And in fact, she didn't know. She didn't even know I did it. She found out through comments on the Facebook page that would always point out, why does Zara never stop Scarlett putting her feet on the furniture? She was like, I can hand on heart say I've never seen you do it. And we all played like that. Everybody had these little things, these little rules that seem like arbitrary, but made fully fleshed people that we all played by and that we would all lean into with each other and go, I had a storyline at one point where I was meant to have been assaulted by another doctor, and nobody knew. Nobody knew. Even when the show ended, I think only one other doctor knew it had ever happened. And the guy playing the business manager, who was a really good friend, came in, and I was trying to find little ways that we could put it across to the audience that Scarlett was really bothered by what had happened to her, because she didn't talk about it, and nobody knew about it. So you kind of had to invent those moments yourself. And I remember being like, "Would you mind touching my shoulder when you come in so that I can like move from you?" He was like, "Yeah, it's a great idea. Let's do that." And the same either way. So there was another storyline where a doctor had been assaulted by a patient, and months later, a patient had to go in and shout at him, and I'd been part of when he was assaulted and stuff. He pointed out to me, he was like, "Do you think maybe we should have like a little moment where we're like, are you sure it's going to be all right because of like what's happened a few months ago?" And so, yeah, we were kind of given that real free range to invent these little moments, these relationships between each other, ad lib, change the lines, cut the lines, that we didn't think were funny. And that's why I always say that job was the best job I've ever had. And a lot of it was because we were a small cast. There was only 12 regulars. And we were literally let loose like kids at their Saturday morning group to just play and go, "That'd be funny if you do that, I'm going to do this." And yeah, it was a joy.
And that's the joy, isn't it? I think, of being an actor. It's the fleshing out. It's the making
Yeah.
it real. It's all the little tiny moments that you know why they would make a decision and what motivates them. And I mean, I even have to work out when their freaking date of birth is. I want to be that. I want to be that
Yeah.
specific. They have to be completely honest, whether it's right through writing or acting, and it has to be really truthful. And that's glorious, because you don't often get that as an actor unless
No.
you're doing a big film or you're really heavily involved
Hey,
with
we
the
were lucky to the
filmmaking.
extent that, like, so there was this particular storyline where me and Dr. Haskey were in the mill late at night. A patient comes in, is really abusive, threatens me. He steps in, she leaves, and then a few days later, she comes back with like some men, and they like batter him, and he ends up in hospital. And that was the storyline. And my part in that storyline ended at the first episode. I didn't have much to do with it after that. And every other character went to visit him in hospital or at his home when he was injured, except for Scarlett. And this went on for weeks and weeks, and she never went there. And I was like, that's so weird, because Scarlett was the only one that would have known why that had happened to him. Nobody else was really aware. And they'd also made an agreement not to go to the police, the two of them. And obviously then those people have come back. And I remember going to the story editor, the story producer, sorry, and just being like, "I think it's really weird that Scarlett's not gone to see Al when they were so involved." And he was like, "What?" And obviously he's trying to look after a whole show. He's not looking at one character's specific journey. And I was like, "Well, is it because she felt really guilty that it had happened after they'd agreed not to go to the police, and that, you know, he'd been sticking up for her in the first place?" And he was like, "I hadn't even, you know, man's got a whole show to run." "I hadn't thought of that." And I was like, "Oh, well, I just wanted to check that there wasn't something I should be playing that I've, you know, now that he's coming back to work, I just wanted to check there wasn't something I should be playing that you were planning further down the line." And he was like, "No, no, I'm going to write it in." And then they wrote a scene where I go in and I'm like, "I'm really sorry I didn't come to see you. Like, was it my fault?" And it was only a little scene, but I think, again, such a good example of why that show was such a beautiful thing. There's not many shows where you can go into one of the producers and say, "By the way, like, is this what's going on with my character?" And they'll go, "We can put it in because it's, you know, that works. I think that works, and it'll make a nice story moment." So yeah, I think, again, I was really blessed with Doctors. I think Doctors was where I had a great time on Dumping Ground, but my character on that, I really grew as an actor doing Doctors, because I didn't really do any of those things when I was playing Jody. I kind of did what I was told, which, when I look back on it now, I look at it and I'm like, "Oh, there's so many other things that could have been a part of that." But that really, Doctors was where I was taught that craft by the others of going, you have to remember these things about your character because they'll test you on it. Because, you know, it's written by so many people that
Yeah.
you have to, like, if you wanna fully realize character that's consistent, the only person that holds on to that on a show, on a soap, is the actor.
And did you have those thoughts though when you were playing Jody, or and did you have them as Scarlett, but then they just enabled you to speak up about it, or was it something that you then started paying attention to
I
when you
think
got
it was definitely something I started paying attention to more. I've always been really tight on storylines being consistent for a character. So, like, you know, there were times at Dumping Ground as I got older that I went in and said she wouldn't do that or she wouldn't say that. Or like they randomly once tried to like just throw in a line where I said to somebody, you know, I've been fostered loads. I was like, she hasn't. She has not been fostered ever. And they were like, oh, but you know, I was like, no, no, no. I was like, because if she'd have been fostered by loads of people, I would have played this character different the whole time. Like that's a fundamental part of her character was that she was taken into care that day to that care home. So we saw her whole care experience on that show. And I was like, I would have been doing this very differently if her history had been, no, I'm not changing that. So yeah, I mean, like I've always been very tight on holding on to like what I believe to be the truth. I mean, look, I'm willing to have it pushed and explained to me differently, but you know, when you go through a change in producers over a long period of time, you do end up knowing more about your character than they do just because you've done it longer. But in terms of having little habits, keeping like the reactions consistent and that sort of thing, it was definitely a skill that I learned more at Doctors. And I didn't really do it as Jody. Jody was quite, when I look at it now, if you said to me, like, what are little things that would put you in that character? I would struggle with that a lot more than with Scarlett. I could list you 10 things immediately that go, I would do this, 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 and this. And you could tell someone how to do Scarlett. Whereas Jody, you couldn't because I kind of didn't build that around her. But I also think because that character was written around me, whereas Scarlett wasn't. I was 10 when I started playing Jody, so they wrote to my strengths and wrote away my weaknesses, apart from when they made me an excellent dancer. I don't know why they did that. That wasn't playing to my strengths. That was insane.
Maybe
But
they felt there was some kind of hidden talent there.
But no, I can tell you what it was. I know what it was because I was 14 and they made me an amazing street dancer, and I genuinely thought there'd been a mix-up. I was like, "This is not written for me, surely." And they were like, "No, it is." And then they said, "Can you go and do like a 5-hour street dance class?" And I said, "Are you all mad?" And then I think they thought that I was just being. There's a misconception that child actors are all triple threats. It's like all, and I went to workshop. We weren't doing a dance break. Like we were just actors. And I tried to tell them this, and they thought I was just being modest. Which also, I don't know why they would have thought that, because if there was one thing I wasn't as a teenager, it was modest. Like, if I could dance, they would have known. And so I went to this 5-hour class. I was dreadful. I mean, I can never explain to you how I don't have any musicality within my. It's just not something I've got. I appreciate it in other people. I do not have it in myself. And I did this routine that I've been learning for like 5 hours. I stood there out of breath because I'm also not fit. And they were like, "We'll get you a stunt double." But then, so then months later, and also I still had to do quite a bit of the dancing myself, and it made me really anxious because, like, look, I think if you'd asked me to dance and I knew it was to be funny or something, I'd have gone at it full force. But because I knew I was meant to look good, and I was meant to look so good that the girl who was my stunt double was the world champion at the time. And there was a specific move that they asked me to learn, by the way. And when I asked her about it, it took her 7 years to learn it. And they were like, "Oh, Kia can bang that out in an afternoon." Like, it was ridiculous. Like, the expectations, you can find the clip, because the expectations that they had of me were Esther. They were insane. And then months later at the rap party, the episode was called Stepping Up. I believe it was episode 3 of season 4.
Noted. Stepping Up. Episode 3.
Honestly, clip it up because it's hilarious. Months later at the rap party, I bumped into the writer of the episode, lovely woman, who said, "I hear you hated the episode." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no. Actually, a really good, like, this element of her having the end of the show. Like, it actually, that became hate the episode, hated the dancing. Why did you do that. I was like, because I genuinely thought, because we had some very talented dancers, I thought she's been given the wrong information.
Yeah.
She said to me, I swear, she said to me, you just had the vibe of someone that can dance. And I was like, and nobody thought to do like a fact check.
Do a little
Like-
backflip across the kitchen and
Like nobody thought to just say, well, let's just check that. Like, you can't. Do you mean I have the vibe of someone that can dance? I also don't. I walk like another producer more recently said to me, which is true, I walk like a farmer, as in I permanently walk like I'm on uneven ground. Which is true.
it's because you're supposed to be a street dancer, Kia Pegg.
But he said he was like a producer like not very long ago was like, you walk like a farmer, and I said, what does that mean? And I should have known better because I knew he would have an answer. And he was like, you permanently walk like the ground's uneven, like you step hard. And so I don't look like a dancer. I look like somebody that's preparing to fall down, which is also because I fall down a lot. I'm really clumsy. I had to go to in primary school, I would be taken out of normal lessons to go to like a special PE lesson because I lacked gross motor skills and I fell down so much. And I still fall down so much as an adult. I fell down the stairs 3 times last year. That's not normal.
No, that isn't normal. No.
And it's just clumsiness. And
Yeah.
every time I was at a train station.
You fell over at a train station?
I fell down 3, Birmingham International, fell down the stairs, twisted my when I say twisted my ankle, sprained my ankle to the point I couldn't walk on it for like 2 weeks. But I had an audition that day, so went to the audition. Anyway, like this. This is how I walked in.
Like a farmer.
I'm not even kidding. I'd also accidentally taken an egg with me in my pocket, the trains had been late, so I only just got there on time. I'd had to warn them I was going to be late. The trains were late because there were swans on the line. That's actually why the train was late. I had an egg.
Ask, why were you carrying an egg? Were you incubating it? What's happening?
Because I was waiting for the train. The train was late. Then there were swans on the line, and then I reached into my pocket and was like, "What the hell is that?" And it was an egg. And I was like, "Why is that there?" So clearly, I've picked it up at some point, put it in my
Yes.
pocket. You couldn't dispose of it. Didn't dispose of it. Then got a bit attached to it and was like, "Well, now I want to see it out." Went to this audition, which I thought, genuinely hand on heart, thought was for a drama. Like, it was a recall, so I taped for it, been recalled, thought it was a drama, walked in, couldn't walk. They were like, what is happening here? I was like, like I fell down the stairs at the train station this morning and sprained my ankle. They were like, do you want to sit down? I was like, no, I've got another foot. I'm fine. And then they were like, how's your day been? I was like, don't ask me that. I'll tell you how my day's been. I was almost late because there were swans on the line and we couldn't touch them apparently to make them move. I've got an egg with me that I've carried across London. Like, I've carried it from Birmingham to London. I told them this whole thing. And then they were like, is this all true? I said, I've got videos.
I remember this on your
I was
Instagram
like, I've got
stories.
videos. And then they said to me, so this show, like the show you're auditioning for, it's obviously a comedy. And I was like, I've never, by the way, never been recalled for a comedy in my life because I'm infamously not a funny actor.
But you're a funny person. I've never seen you. Probably are a funny actor because you're a very
I'm
funny
not.
person.
No, I'm really not. I'm not. I'm not. Like, Ian always used to give me funny monologues specifically because it was what I couldn't do. Like, I'm not a funny actor. Like, there's something about me when I'm acting that's like just deeply tragic. It's like bad things have happened to me. So when they said this is obviously a comedy, I was thinking, why are you saying obviously? Like, I had no idea. I taped for it. I'd done 2 scenes. And they went, and the reason that obviously we recalled you is because your tape was so funny and like you didn't miss any of the jokes. And I was thinking, what jokes? What jokes are you speaking of? And so then I also thought they're going to think I'm doing a bit. I've come in here and I can't walk and there were swans on the line and I've got an egg with me. If it was for a comedy, else I wouldn't have walked in like that. Because it looks like I'm making it up to be funny. And then they were like, let's do the scene. So I got on my feet. I'm thinking, I haven't prepared for this to be funny. I'm doing this as a drama. I'm doing the scene as I've rehearsed it because I don't have time to try and work out how to be funny because that's not in my wheelhouse. Like, I can't be funny at the drop of a hat. Like, I don't have it in me.
Disagree.
As I'm doing the scene, they're laughing. I'm thinking, what's happening? I've never, like, apart from when I'm talking as myself, I have never, while acting, elicited a laugh. It's just not
Because
like.
you were playing it so straight. Like, because you play
Said to me, they went, "You've not missed a single gag." And again, I was like, "What gags? I don't know what they are." And then they said, "Let's do it one more time." And then I did it again. And after that one, and I'm genuinely serious, they said to me, "You've even added an element that we didn't like think of funny." And I was like,
Oh
"What
my
the hell are you
God.
people talking about?" And then I was like, "Right, I've finished the audition." They were like, "Great to meet you. What are you going to do with the egg?" And I was like, "Well, I'm meeting some of my friends for lunch, so I'm probably gonna get them to take a picture with it." Um, and they were like, "Okay, um, are you gonna be all right, like getting to where you're going with your ankle like that?" I was like, "Yeah, my friend that I'm meeting is on crutches, so I can't really complain. Like it'll be fine." And then I left, and I didn't get that job, but I got some very nice feedback off them. However, I didn't know that the whole time. I was like, why do you keep laughing? I was like, I don't know what's funny in this scene. And they kept saying, "You've not missed a single joke." And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
But you are a funny person, and so maybe you just. And
not,
sometimes, like
not when I'm
I've
trying.
yeah. but sometimes the straighter you play it, the funnier it
Yeah.
is. But I mean, the fact that you didn't actually know it was comedy is hilarious.
I had no clue. I
It's
literally
so
had no
funny.
idea. And they said to me, like, it's obviously a comedy. And I've got a very expressive face.
Yeah.
Like my face does things that I don't know that it does. Sometimes I watch myself on telly and I'm like, I didn't know I was doing that. In fact, I saw an interview that I did, well, not an interview, like a game thing for CBBC that they posted a few days ago, and you can see that I'm visibly irritated. At one point, someone says something to me, and I go,
Did you ever watch? You might be too young, but did you ever watch SMTV Wonky Donkey? And I know
"Yeah,
they used to really lean into it, but Deck would be like, "For God's sake, man, it's not."
yeah," which is also when I'm presenting. So a regular note that I get, because like my OB item is that I knock on kids' doors and surprise them, and my producer will regularly remind me not to do it like a bailiff.
Or a farmer bailiff.
Because he says because I did it one time, and well, the thing is, it was in a school, so I had to go into this room, and I didn't. You can't rehearse that, and I expected the door to have a lot more resistance than the door had, which meant that I just flung it open, and it went bang, and then I was like, I can't remember what the little girl's name was now, but I was essentially like, "Good morning," and he was like, it was. And now
Terrifying.
he reminds me, and he's like, "Yeah, if you could just knock on the door, not like you're coming to like repossess their car, um, that would be
How old
great."
was he?
About 12.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
that's okay. And so, how did you get into doing Saturday Mashup and presenting?
by accident. Have I ever actually told you the story of how I started presenting?
I don't think you have.
It's ridiculous. You'll
Tell
enjoy
me.
it.
I've got me
It,
brew.
no, it is a good story. I tell it a lot because it's so unlikely. So I'd never done any presenting ever, but, and this is genuinely true, I had always harboured a secret desire for it. So when I was a kid on Dumping Ground, I used to say a lot like, "Oh, I'd really like to be a presenter." And they all used to be like, "Why?" And I couldn't really explain it. It was just something that I'd always secretly wanted to have a go at. But obviously, I was an actor. I didn't know the route to it. I just didn't think it was like something that was going to happen for me. Um, and I was I was in town with my mum, and my agent at the time rang me and was like, "Where are you?" And I was like, "Why are you saying that like I should be somewhere?" She was like, "So you're not in Manchester?" This is with no context. I was like, "No." And she said, "How quickly can you be in Manchester?" And but like by pure chance, I was in town, so I was by the station. I was like, "The train's like an hour and a half, in theory." And I could hear her like, and she was like, "Right, there's a train in 7 minutes. Could you be on that one?" I was like, "Yeah, like if I run." She said, get on that one, and ring me back and I'll explain to you. And I was like, okay. I said to my mum, I've got to go to Manchester. And she was like, why? I said, I don't know. And she was like, okay. So I
King,
bought myself,
stop vlogging. You need your own show.
it's ridiculous. So I bought myself a ticket, went and ran down to the platform, realised I had my mum's parking ticket, ran back, gave it to a man who worked in the train station and said, my mum at some point is going to come and say that she can't get our car out of the car park. This is our ticket, okay? And he was like, okay. Left again. Ran my mum, was like, this is this man that's got your parking ticket. You're going to have to go and find him. Got on the train. My agent ran me and was like, oh, they need you to present CBBC this afternoon. And I was like, I thought it was a mistake. I did a lot of promo for our show. And probably of all of us, I did it the most. And I thought that she got her wires crossed and that's what she meant, which is where you just go and answer questions about the new series and stuff. And I'd done that a lot. So I was like, okay. She was like, you're going to miss the first link, but you'll be there in time for the second one. I was like, okay. Did they forget to book me or something? And she was like, they'd sent an availability check, but never followed it up or sent any travel or anything. So obviously they just assumed that I wasn't doing it. My agent had assumed I wasn't doing it. So I got to Media City, walked in, was met by the door, which never happens on that job, by somebody being like, oh, thank God you're here. I was like, what is going on? Walked in, was given an earpiece, which you don't get given if you're a guest. And I was like, something's gone wrong here. Walked us into the studio. They said, we've got 9, it was like 9 or 11. It was like somewhere, 10-ish minutes until we're live. Go into the studio. I was like, okay. I was wearing just what I happened to be wearing out that day. Like with just enough makeup on for going out that day. Phil Fletcher, the puppeteer for Hacker, who I've known since I was a kid, was like, from the floor, was like, you're not a presenter. I was like, I've got this earpiece still in my hand. And he's like, is that on? And he was like, can you hear anything through it? I was like, no. He was like, it's not on then, is it? Give it here. Turns it on. I put it in my ear. I've never used talkback in my life. That's never happened. They gave me an iPad with a script on it, which when you do press, you have to learn each link while the cartoon is on. So you've got like 10 to 25 minutes to learn like the 3-minute link. But I didn't. I had like 10. And also I didn't know what was happening. So then they sent me round a corner. We practiced it twice. Then we went live. On the live, I walk into the studio. The dog is like, here she is, the people's princess. Why were you late? Where have you been? And I'm like, I didn't even know I was meant to be here today, Hacker. And he was like, oh, like, he's like, what's up next? I'm like, Danger Mouse. Did a full afternoon of presenting. At the end of it, Phil's like, everyone, that was Kia's first ever go at presenting. Everyone's then horrified because they've put someone, they're talking to me about hard counts and soft counts. I don't know what they are saying, but didn't think it appropriate to ask, which actually I should have, because that's important. They're just like saying words that I've never heard before because the terminology is very different. And that was genuinely how I started presenting.
At what point did you realise I'm actually presenting the whole show?
Think, I don't know really. So I did that, and then by pure coincidence.
No, I mean on the actual day. I know you walked in and
I don't know.
At what point did you like?
I honestly don't know.
Go.
I think when I realised there wasn't another human there, because Hacker's never there on his own.
So it was just you presenting the whole show?
With him, with Hacker. So we were doing like the equivalent of the broom cupboard. We were doing like the broom cupboard that day. And then by pure chance, the same week, unrelated, Saturday Mashup said, do you want to guest present the show? Which that's a bigger beast. It's 2.5 hours live Saturday morning. And I was like, yeah. So then I did that the same week. Unrelated, 2 producers just had the same thought, I guess. And then what happened was with that was Rhys Stevenson was in Strictly at the time. So I then covered for Rhys while he was in Strictly on CBBC. So I would like vote for him every Saturday night to stay in. And but then I became like their supply teacher. So if anyone had the day off, I would go in and fill in. And then Saturday Mashup just slowly evolved. And I was there's one producer on that show who, when Doctors got cancelled, was the first person to text me about it. He texted me so quickly I was still in the meeting being told it was cancelled. I was like, thanks, Jamie. Still in the meeting. Will text you properly later. He was the only person, and I genuinely, out of everyone I know, to text me on the last day of filming to say, like, I hope you're all right. And he kept saying, we're going to find, because at that point, they then got a new permanent host for Mashup, because I did a lot of it, but I only ever guest presented it. And so he kept saying to me, I'm going to find something for you on the show, though. I'm going to find something for you on the show, which, like, I thought he was just being nice. And then he rang me weeks before the next series started, way before he needed to, and was like, I wanted to put your mind at rest that I wasn't just saying that about finding you something. I've come up with this OB that I'd like you to front. There's going to be a game in the studio that we'd like you to do every week, every few weeks. And they built me this role as like a third presenter. I don't like the way he describes it. He describes it as I'm their Keith Chegwin from Swap Shop.
You know what happened to Keith Chegwin? He did a naked game show that he presented with his
Yeah.
willy out.
I also just don't like being compared to Keith Chegwin.
You don't give me Keith vibes.
But yeah, so I was really the presenting has just been luck after luck, like just fortune, like just random fortune after random fortune. And then it was only last year. I've been doing it. I think this year will be 5 years of presenting, and it was last year that I put like in my bio and stuff like actor/presenter, because I like up until then people would be like, so you present kids TV, and I'd be like, not really. No, I don't really do it. Like I'm an actor. I don't really know what I'm doing. But that, I mean, it's been like almost 5 years, so that's ebbing away. And now it's more scary because they expect me to know what I'm doing.
Yes, because there's almost a freedom, isn't there, when you've just been brought in? It doesn't matter,
Yeah.
there's not as much pressure. Whereas actually, this is your job. Well, hang on, I'm
Now it's actually my
really
job, and
good
I
at
should
it.
know.
And do you think there's something as well with the way your brain works that kind of thrives in that environment where it's instant?
Yeah, I love live. So I did live telly for like 6 months before I started on Doctors, give or take. And I've always said it was the only thing that can really prepare you for Doctors is live TV, because the only thing that goes faster than Doctors is being live. But I love it. Like, I really love it. I'm a terrible corpser. Like, you can break me in an instant, so I laugh a lot. Like, sometimes by the end of the show, like, I get the train back with like a lot of the producers and stuff, and I have laughed so much that I sit on the train thinking like, my stomach is hurting, and we've been on telly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do. I really enjoy it. I've come to, so because I started doing presenting without any warning, um, I never was given the option of different types of talkback. I was only ever given open talkback, which now means every now and then they put me on switch and I can't do it. So open is
Some
where
of the
you can hear,
difference.
well, open is where you can hear the gallery all the time. So you can hear them, whatever they're saying and doing. And switch is where you can only hear them if they press a button to talk to you. So it's silent other than when they want you for something. But I was put on open in prayers straight away. I don't even know if they have the option to do switch there actually. Which means I'm now not very good. If I get put on switch, when it's silent and then they press the button, I'm more likely to stop to listen. Whereas if I can hear them all the time, I'm not as bad. I also just quite like it. Like I quite like the constant, like, you can hear what's going on. Plus, if you've got it on open, you can hear when you're getting a laugh, which is
Yes.
like a
Oh, so
big
then there's an
motivator.
audience to play to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Years ago, I did some work at CITV in the late 90s, and I was in the studio with Stephen Mulhern, and her name was Danielle, and I had the talk back, and I thought, I don't quite know if I'd be able to do this. How quickly did it take you to adjust to it?
It's easier than you think. Well, I think it's easier than people think, because it
Yeah.
sounds so complicated. It
Yeah.
sounds really hard that you're presenting and, having a full other conversation while there's like 5 or 6 people talking about different bits in your ear. But it's not that hard. You get used to tuning in and out of what you need to hear. So like, for example, like if I hear numbers, I always hear the numbers because I know I need to hear the numbers, people counting and stuff. But you also get used to knowing, like, a good producer will have a tone of voice where you know
Yeah.
what's for you. So, like, sometimes they'll feed you a line and there's just a nuance to the way they say that you know they're telling you repeat after me. So you just sort of get used to it. And sometimes they're talking away, and you just know it's nothing to do with you. And so you don't hear it as much. It's not as hard as, I mean, I literally did it on the spot that day, so I just think it can't be that
Yeah.
hard because I'm not like some sort of presenting savant. So like it can't be that bad, I think. It sounds harder than it is.
Have you ever tried
Like as in
on television doing Saturday Mashup? Have you ever had a moment
um
where you thought, I don't know what to say?
uh not that I don't know what to say. And so the closest I came was this year. We were doing a surprise knock on the door. Do you want to slime? They wanted to slime their teachers. These two boys. Do you want to slime your teachers? And normally I prepare like just a bit of patter because for while I'm running to the house, you know, come on, cameraman Tom, like mind your feet there. We're gonna get to this door, a bit of chat. But this was a really short driveway, and I was right by the front door, so I hadn't prepared any. Or I got like the generic stuff that I normally say, but I hadn't thought of anything specific because, I was right next to the door, and I knocked the door, and they just didn't answer. And I was like, and it's not that long. I've watched it back, and it's not that long, but it felt.
Feels, yeah.
So I'm like, no. I hope they're in. I think they're in. I'm pretty sure they're in. I'm going to try the bell. And what I wanted to do was shout in the letterbox, but I didn't know whether CBBC can be very, they have to be really careful about what we're doing. So I was like, oh, I'm not sure whether that would be okay. And then I heard in my ear, my producer in Glasgow go, shout through the letterbox. I was like, banging. So I'm like, hello, it's Saturday Mashup. Come to the door. And that was maybe the closest I've come to having nothing to say, only because we, maybe foolishly, have never prepared what the out would be if the child doesn't answer the door. And why would we? Because we know they're there. Like, why would they not answer the door to us? So, and they did eventually come to the door. What had happened was they'd realised I was at their house and got so overwhelmed that they'd run upstairs to hide in their room. So it just took them a really long time. And when they come to the door, they're really out of breath. But that was maybe the closest I've ever come. I said to the producer afterwards, like, how long would you have left me knocking on their door? And he was like, maybe another minute. And
I mean, it's a long time in that
yeah,
game, isn't it?
and then I said, what would we do if they never come to the door? And everyone was just like, I don't know. Like,
You'd have to do some street dancing.
like, we'd have to do something. So that's maybe the closest I've ever come. I fell off air a couple of times, which is hard. When I've been out doing an OB, I fell off air twice, which is weird because you don't know that you've fallen off air, and especially with the delay. So both times I was carrying on with the link, and then while I'm talking, I can suddenly hear them go, "Where have they gone? Where have they gone?" And there's like a delay. So I've fallen off air before they've. It's trying to beat the delay is a constant ongoing battle. But then sometimes while I'm still talking, I'll hear one of the presenters in Glasgow say, "We've lost Kia," and then I'll be like, "Have you lost me?" Because we don't know that it's happened, and so that's a bit of a scary thing. And I've had moments where we've been imminently about to go live from a location and we've had no idea whether it was going to work or not because we've dropped out during rehearsal and stuff, and then they've gone, we don't know if the link's working, we don't know if we're going to get you. So you're stood there like waiting to do. The worst is when it happens when you're about to do the surprise, because you can't, like, you have to capture that
Yes.
there and then, and sometimes you just don't know. We were in a block of flats once and the walls were just too thick, basically. Look, I don't know the science, but that was my understanding. And they were going, we're going to have to run a cable from, wherever they were running it from. And they were like, well, we've only got 40 seconds till they come to us. And so they're trying to like rapidly make the camera work. And that's quite a scary thing, but it's also thrilling. Because like, where else do you get that? Like, I don't think there's nothing comparable to a set in that sort of atmosphere. Even if you've got a proper like KBS day and you're at the end of the day going, we've got to get this, you haven't really got to get it because you can find a way to shoot it otherwise. Whereas when you're live, yeah, like, you have to get it. You
Yeah.
have to do it because it's happening there and then.
But there's something quite exhilarating about that,
Yeah.
having to make it work and thinking on your feet. And also, I know you said earlier that when you aren't working, you can get a little bit anxious because it quietens all that down, doesn't it? Because you can't. There's no time to overthink anything. You're just
No.
being
Yeah.
in the moment.
Yeah, 100%. It is. I think that because you always have like a come down after a job, don't you? Like there's always
Yeah.
always a come down. But from doing the Saturday morning stuff is always quite a big come down because it's there's nothing like it. Like it's like a shot of like pure adrenaline that you get like once a week, and it's such a thrill. I mean, when you're counted down to live on the Saturday morning, I don't very often guest host anymore because I've got my own stuff to do, obviously. But there's a moment in the morning where if you're the main host, you're at the top of the stairs. The show opens, you're at the top of the stairs, and you run down through the audience and you meet in the middle while it's like doing the theme tune. But there's a moment when the theme tune, the actual theme tune of the show comes on, da 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 da, da, and you're hearing that, and then they'll say to you, "Right, have a great show, and we'll come to you in 3, 2, 1." And there's nothing like it being told like, "Have a great show," and then like counted down to literally going on telly there and then. It's like I don't think there's anything like that.
Yeah, and do you have, when that happens, do you have what I know a lot of people have before you go onto stage, of that moment of, why the fuck am I doing this?
Yeah.
I'm a bloody idiot. This is a stupid decision. Why am I going onto the stage?
Yeah.
And then you get off and you love it. Do you have that same feeling, or is it different?
I always have like a little demon that goes, "This is the one where you'll swear."
Yeah.
Like, and I've never even I'm live, I don't even like, I don't even, because I don't even swear in the studio because I'm so paranoid about it. But well, I'm not. It's just you don't like you don't think about it. It's like you get into that environment and that little switch goes in your head where you no longer you just don't anymore. But sometimes on the count, I think this is the one where I'll say something terrible, or I'm so glad I don't start at the top of the stairs because I always used to be convinced I was going to fall down.
Yeah.
Always, and that's
Yeah.
the closest I've ever come is to saying, not to swearing, but saying God, which you also can't say on children's TV. Was I tripped up something and went, "Oh goodness." It's the closest I've ever. That's the closest I've ever come to saying something that I shouldn't. Was falling over. Because it's just such a human thing to go, "Oh God,
Yeah.
people."
And that was stairs again. The fear of, I mean, you've fallen down.
Fear of stairs,
I
man.
mean, 3
And
times.
they're like narrow. They're hard those ones because they're like narrow. They turn, and there's kids lining them. There's children. The kids line the full length of the stairs, and you like high five them as you go down. And I'm like, I need both hands on a rail. Like
Yes.
I can't. I don't.
Fucking Nana.
I can't be like high fiving, and also you've got to get there for a beat because it's like Saturday, 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 mash up, land. And it's like you have to be there on time, so it's quite fast.
Yes.
I don't have to do it very often, and I'm always so glad.
And you do teaching and presenting coaching for BAFTA now, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, so I do more coaching for Dumping Grounds, so I work as their on-set acting coach on that, which is a real joy. That's been a real delight. For BAFTA, I do this thing where we partnered with Place to Be, which is a children's mental health charity, or BAFTA, and they have a handful of presenters that we go into schools and we talk to them about, like, we do an assembly about the importance of being creative, and then we do a masterclass on presenting, and we like do visits and stuff. But I coach predominantly on Dumping Ground, and that's been, because when I left that show, it wasn't a nice experience at all leaving, which I've always been very open about, was that it wasn't, I don't feel handled very well. I think they said things that they shouldn't have said. And they told me I'd be leaving, and I got doctors in between being told that and being expected to go back and do the final episode. And amongst their mishandling of it, it then meant that they suddenly had to liaise with a new job to get me to do this episode that I wasn't a particular fan of, which again is no secret. And so yeah, it wasn't a very nice time, and I left in kind of it was a really sad and like sour way to leave something that I'd been a part of for like 11 years. And then when Doctors ended, there was a producer on it who was on it when I was a teenager, had gone and done other shows and been brought back to do it again. And he texted me and was like, would you be interested in being the acting coach for the kids that we have now? I won't be offended if you don't want to do it. And I was like, no, I would like to do it. And he was like, you don't have to say yes just because I like, we get on quite well. He was like, you don't have to say yes just because like you feel obliged. I was like, I don't. Like, I really didn't feel obliged to that show anymore. And going back was really, like, personally a really important thing for me, because it suddenly, I hadn't been able to look back on Dumping Ground in a positive way. The whole thing was spoiled for me by the ending, which is unfortunately, like, I think an unfortunate side of how my brain works, because I'd left on a sour note. It had soured the whole 11 years. So for me, it was a really nice thing to be able to go back and kind of like fall in love with it again. And the kids are, I mean, there's for about 14 of them. And I love it. It's so, what I really like about it is it's not what you would think. A lot of it is like problem solving, and trying to figure out why, you know, this 7-year-old doesn't want to, like, or isn't quite managing something particular. And then it's my sort of job to look at it from her point of view and work out a way of supporting that. It's kind of quite pastoral, and I really enjoy it. And there wasn't anybody like that there when I was little. And so I think I find it quite easy to go, well, I know why that's happening, because this is happening. And if you take that element out, and so like little things, like, I mean, one of the things that I do for one of them is she's very little and she was kind of struggling with understanding her journey through a script, like her character's journey. She understood that she could do it, but because the shooting out of order, she struggled with that element. So I used to make her like a sticker chart that was essentially like a chronological look of each, like I'd do each episode, set it out like a call sheet, but in like story order, and then she would put a sticker on for every time she shot a scene, so she would know what she'd filmed and what she hadn't filmed. And like, I think it's a really good job in that sense, because there's nobody else that's got the time to look at it from that point of view. But it's great. So I do like games workshops with them. We do character building workshops. One of the first things we did last year there was a change in producers, and I felt it was really important for the kids to have autonomy over their character and to feel like they understood what they were doing and that they weren't just being moved about by what these new producers' perception of their character was, which obviously a new producer is going to bring new things to it, but that they still felt that they were playing the same person. So I got like some Guinness World Record books, some magazines, like just some books that had lots of varied pictures in. And we spent like 3 hours with all of the kids making mood boards of their character and like what their character meant to them and how they saw their character. And then the producers came up and they explained their mood board to the producers, so that the producers knew what they thought their character was. And so like they each had to, I didn't have very many rules for it, but they had to at least put on like 3 adjectives. They had to put on at least one metaphor, so like an animal or weather or something like that. And then they had to put on one question, something they don't know about their character that they would like to find out. Which was great, because it just like, it set them off from, they had a base, but everyone had a base, because the producers had that base for them then as well. And they came up with some brilliant things. I mean, one little girl did mountain ranges because they're hard to get to. And far away, which is what she felt her character was to the other kids. She also put hers was really space themed because stars are so distant, and like that's what she thought her character was. And we had another little girl that had put on a lot about the ocean, because she felt that the ocean really related to her. And like one little boy put dogs all over his because his character was so loyal and really believed in friendship. And they came up with some really, and then they came up with great questions as well, things that they didn't know about their characters. So yeah, I really enjoyed doing it. It's a really nice thing. And plus, they're good fun. They're funny kids. They make me laugh.
And the thing is, going back to the start of our conversation, you know, you talking about being in the workshop and the fact that you got to write plays, and then the older kids had to perform them, and that's what you're giving those kids. And you're giving them a way of expressing who they believe their characters are, fleshing them out more. That doesn't require words. Do it visually.
Yeah.
Ask us questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and let me help you understand everything. And that's so invaluable for
Yeah, so
learning.
they did these mood boards, and in the end, the producers were like, "Can we keep them to like have this as a reference?" Because they'd written, which was brilliant, really good, because the kids didn't have this at the time before, and they'd written them each a character biography, which was great. But I was a bit like, however, some of these kids have been playing these characters for like 4 years, so writing them a character biography now, from your point of view, it's not quite fair, because they've already built their own perception of what their character is. So yeah, so we do a lot of work on that. And so like with some of them are, I mean, they're all super talented kids, but they all have different kind of things that they struggle with. So some of them struggle with their confidence in terms of saying, I don't understand that, or because a lot of them don't want to say, I don't understand that, which is understandable in itself. So like some of them, it's just like building that confidence of, rather than coming and asking me, you're going to go to the first AD and ask, where are we going from? You can do that. You can do that. You're not in trouble for doing it. And it's an important skill that you need as an actor. So for some of them, it's actually is just building that sort of thing of encouraging them to say what they don't know. Some of them, it's just learning more about like the language used on a set, like words that aren't used in any other area of their life. Some of them, when they get to us, are brand new. They've never been on a set before. So you're just teaching them the basics of working. And a lot of it, like, you know, teaching them to hit a mark and stuff, which there was a producer at one point that was like, "Oh, they don't need to worry about that." And I was like, "No, they do." She went, "No, it doesn't matter, because if they don't hit the mark, we'll just reshoot it. We can work around them." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no." I was like, "Look, if they don't hit the mark, one, you're not going to like it as much as you do in theory. Like, in theory, oh, it's fine. We can move around it. In practice, it's going to eat your day up." I was like, but also from their point of view, it makes them more confident. If they
Yeah.
can go onto a set and they know they can hit that mark every time, they have pride in it. They have a real pride in it. And the fact that they don't need to go again, because often people don't always want to explain to kids why you're going again, because they think it'll dent their confidence. It's the opposite. If the kid knows why you're going again, if not, they're left thinking, it's me. I've done it wrong. I'm not very good. Whereas if you just say to them, you didn't hit the mark, you can teach them to hit a mark. It's easy done. And like the kids that I teach, we have a game for hitting the mark. And they are obsessed with it, to the point where we normally keep a league table, because they take such pride in being good at that. And so yeah, so some of it is just teaching things that not get overlooked, but that I think sometimes in the busy world of making a show, they go, "Oh, well, it doesn't matter if the kids can do that or not, because we can work around it." Whereas actually, if you just teach them to do it, not only do you then not have to work around it, but they feel better about themselves. Like they feel like, and they think they're adults. I know they do, because we did. When I was a child actor, we thought we were on par with the crew. We thought we were like, we didn't look at ourselves as children. We looked at ourselves as actors. And so yeah, so it's sort of just trying to constantly work on those things. And it's great because they like it. I mean, they'll come over and like, because I don't work there every day. I only do a few days a week, and they don't know when I'm coming, because normally I don't know when I'm coming either. So I sort of just rock up when I'm there. But they'll say to me like, "Oh, I've got this scene on Thursday. Can we work on that?" Yeah, yeah. And then they have this hour, right? It'll be just me and them, or you know, 2 or 3 of them, and we'll work on this thing that in their head they're worried about. I don't always know why they're worried about it, but it gives them this chance to sort of like, it's a lot of it is confidence building, and that's it's a really nice thing to do. And they're funny. They make me laugh the whole time I'm there. They're hilarious. There's one little boy who I had to have a chat with him because, and this kid is off the charts. Incredible kid. He's like really like a savant. Like he just gets it. But I had to have a word with him because, well, I was requested to have a word with him because there's an older actor in that show called Dave Johns, who, like, BAFTA winning, you know, I, Daniel Blake,
Oh, yes.
the lead from that,
Oh, right. Yeah.
plays the gardener in the show. And obviously, I mean, like, an older actor and top of his game, knows what he's doing. Him and this little boy were doing a scene together where Dave has to be quite emotional. I wasn't there when it was being filmed, but while Dave was acting, this little boy kept prompting him on his lines.
God.
And look, Dave was good about it, but they were like, Kia, can you like try and explain to him not to? So I had this little boy and I had to sort of say to him like, I know you think you're helping him, but he doesn't actually need your help. And if Dave did need help, he would not be asking you. He'd be asking someone else. So unless Dave asks you specifically to help him, stop helping him. But I know that you're only doing it because you know the lines and you're trying to help. I know that it's not badly intentioned, but like, I had to try and explain that etiquette to him. And he sat there like swinging his legs, looking at me. And then he was like, so I should just not help him? And I was like, well, it's very nuanced, Henry, but it's not really help. You're not helping. And he was like, okay, so what? I just leave him to suffer? And I was like, well, I wouldn't put it that way. But yeah, leave him to suffer. They're hilarious, and their sort of outlook on that. One little boy said to me at one point, we were talking about asking directors questions, and he was like, so if I'm in a scene, oh yeah, can I ask, like, could I say, like, if there was a bowl of apples, could I say to the director, shall I juggle the apples while we're talking? And I went, I don't know, can you juggle? And he went, yeah. I was like, well, yeah, you could ask that. And he was like, oh, I get it, okay. Or like little things, like there was one boy who was in it a couple of years ago that struggled with his diction, and I taught him a really silly trick where where you bite your tongue and say the line 3 times. He looked at me like I was Jesus. Like when he got the line out crystal clear, he looked at me like I was like the second coming of the Lord. And I was like, it's just a silly trick. And he, weeks later, ran up to me in the corridor, like ran from his chaperone because he spotted me. And he was over the moon because he taught it to an adult that he was working with. He was like, I taught him the thing, and it worked, and it was really good. And the same boy came running up to me once to tell me that he'd had a round of applause on set. And I was like, that is amazing. What did you get a round of applause for? And he went, hitting my mark. I said, I'm going to stop you there. That's not round of applause worthy. I was like, you shouldn't be getting a round of applause for hitting your mark. You should just be doing that. And he looked at me and went, it was critical though. And I was like, okay. But yeah, so it is. It's really nice. I'm sort of like in between. It's like this grey area between. I'm not a chaperone. I'm not licensed to be a chaperone. And I don't want to be. But I'm also like kind of this middle ground between production and a chaperone and like, like my own department. So they sort of like will come and like just chat to you about, what do you think about this? And you're like, well, I think it's very good. I think you're doing a wonderful job. Yeah, it's nice. I like it.
And it's like we say, it's taking those skills that you learned, and you were on set and you didn't have that, and you know what you can give them, and you're empowering them, not only how they are currently in their roles, but also if they go on to be actors or just
This
in
is what
life,
I
with
always
the
say.
confidence.
This is what because like I say that I came away from the reason I got on so well at Doctors was because I'd been on this like 11-year apprenticeship at Dumping Ground, which meant that like, look, I learned loads about being an actor at Doctors. I didn't learn anything technical because I had that down. Like for that show, for what for what those shows are, I don't need help with continuity. I can hit a mark. I understand shots. I can count shots. I understand that world well from being a child because you take it in differently as a kid. Whereas, now I try for that on Dumping Ground when I'm coaching because being able to go onto Doctors with that skill set meant that they accepted me really quickly because I wasn't ruining their day. They weren't having to talk me through things or show me things or like be like, it's a fast-paced show. And that's the aim for these kids is that if they want to be actors, if that's what they want to do after this, because not all kids do. They do it as a kid and then they don't want to do it as an adult. But if they choose to go into it as an adult, I really hope that they can leave and know all of these things and that they're not suddenly 16 on a different set going, why did nobody ever tell me
Why
that?
was I allowed not to? It's important that you hit your mark because editing and
Yeah, and like,
continuity, and that's
yeah,
part of it.
yeah, I would hate for them to end up on a different job and be like, why wasn't I prepared for this other half of what the job is? Because it's not just learning your lines and acting. It's a technical job. There's a lot of technicalities to it. Yeah, so it's I think it's really, really important.
I totally agree, and I think it's brilliant how you talk to the children like human beings and not like children, and you know,
Yeah.
and you hold them, and you teach them that it's safe, and I'm going to tell you if you've done something wrong, but I'm also...
Because again, at workshop, I don't think we were really taught to like we were children.
No, well, Ian Smith definitely not.
I once gave him some chocolate for Christmas that had written on it, it was when it was 30 years of workshop, and it had written on it, like, I think it was something to the effect of like, Ian Smith, 30 years of scaring children. Ian used to do this thing where when we gave him Christmas presents, he would actually like take them home and open them at Christmas. Like he didn't open them at workshop with us. And I can remember I'd almost forgotten that I'd done it by the time we went back. I was about 14 when we went back in January. And the minute the session started, he was like, you little shit. He was like, Christmas morning in front of my family. And I was just like, oops. But yeah, but again,
total softy, really. Actually, it's his
Yeah.
birthday. It is in a couple of days. It's his birthday, but
he didn't talk to us like we were children.
no, not in the
And it was great.
slightest. No, and it kept you on your toes because
It
you...
did. But and it went both ways, because also I can remember being really remember this because Ian's way of complimenting you wasn't to compliment you, it was just to not insult you. Like, it was like, if you didn't get notes or insults at the end of what you were doing, then he probably liked it. So, but I can remember he rang me once, and I was quite young. And I'd missed one year. I won Workshopper of the Year when I was little, quite young, and I wasn't there because I was filming. And he texted me like, "You won the big award last night. Ring me." And I hate ringing that man. Love him, hate ringing him. It's horrible. Also, I don't know if his voicemail is still like this, but his voicemail sounds like he's answered the phone. So you're petrified to ring him, and your heart's pounding because you've got to ring him, and it rings and rings and rings, and then it's like, "Hi, Ian." And you're like, you're right, Ian. And then it's like, "I can't come to the phone right now." And you're like, "Oh, it's his bloody voicemail." But he rang me and complimented me properly, and then we both just sat in silence on the phone, and he went, "Anyway, see you Saturday." Because like we just neither of us had anywhere to go with it. But yeah, and I think it was great.
Like you say, a compliment from Ian is like the highest thing, isn't
Because
it?
he directed About Jack, didn't he?
He did. He directed my play.
Did
Yeah.
he scare you when he was watching it?
No, he didn't. But I'd sort of got closer to him in the few years prior, a little bit, and then through the play, it was
The
just...
way he watches things scares me.
Yeah.
When he sits on the edge of his seat, looking at you like he's so immersed in it, and it's
He's
brilliant.
brilliant. He's brilliant.
Because you know that you're being watched.
Yes, yeah. Well, he's when he talked about Jack, I remember one of the highest compliments he gave me was, he used to tell me off on the first show when we did Birmingham. He said, "You're being too funny. Stop being comedy. You need to stop leaning into the jokes." And he made me cut a couple of lines, which he said, "You've got to kill." And his line was, "You've got to kill some babies," as in some of your favourite lines have to go, just because there was a line that I wrote where Mel was playing, and she said something about, she was prattling on about something, and she was talking about stuffing animals like taxidermy, and she went, "God, Mick, love that boa," as in boa constrictor, and went, "It's got to go." And I was like, "Oh, please, Ian." And he said no. But at the end, he was so complimentary about, he said a couple of things to me, and I thought, oh my God, it means the world if you get a compliment from him.
Really, I think my whole whenever I'm working, always, and this really isn't an exaggeration, always in the back of my mind is like an 8-year-old that just wants Ian Smith to think I'm good. Like, always. There was one point at Doctors where we did this quite cool, like, we were coming back on and we'd never done anything like it before. And after the hiatus, we did this thing where it was like me having a gossip on the phone to like catch the audience back up on how we'd left the end of the bit before. And he commented on it as like that it was good, and I was just like,
Yeah.
like, because it's just such a rare thing and it's so important, but it's so grounding to have somebody that can tell you straight. He's also hilarious. Last time I saw him, we were chatting. I got my mate with me, and before we met him, I was like, he'll insult me to my face, but just it's fine. Like that just I was like, it's just part of what's happening. And he was like, what do you want to do? He was like, what do you think you want to like do at the minute? I was like, I'd like to do, I haven't done theatre since I was little at workshop. I was like, I'd like to do theatre. And he was like, you could do theatre because you could still play a child. And I was like, yeah. And then he went, I went to see a great thing with my grandson recently. And I was thinking, I know his grandson is a small child. And he was like, and it was like, what's that children's book that's like at the zoo or what, like in the zoo? You know, the zoo one?
Yeah.
And he was like, you could be in that. And I was like, no, I said, that's not what I mean. He was like, oh, sorry. Did you mean you wanted to do like actual proper theatre? I was like, I said, yes, Ian. That's what I meant. He was like, oh. But I'd like to do theatre. And he was like, yeah, get yourself in children's theatre.
Go and do Teletubbies.
I was like, I'm not above it, Ian, but that's absolutely not what I mean. And you know it's not what I mean.
But I think there's something that he does that you clearly do, and I actually, unfortunately, don't possess it, is that I am somebody who is very effusive and just my nature. In fact, when I did that strength test that I was talking about earlier, positivity came out as my second one, and the shadow side of that, and empathy and positivity were my top two. But the shadow side of that is people sometimes don't believe you because you're so like, this is amazing and you're brilliant and rah, 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 because I'm so sort of into it. And I think actually there is something to be said for not giving that away because
it's true, because you believe every word that comes out of that man's mouth.
Absolutely. And I had a drama school years ago for about 10 years, and there was a lovely woman who came into it with me, Sue, and she didn't give it out quite as much, and she was a bit more direct. And I remember hearing one of the kids saying that they really believed what she was saying. And I thought, and you saying that and thinking about Ian, it made me think, when you move forward now, because obviously Doctors is finished, and when you look at what are your ambitions?
I think a big ambition I've got at the minute, which is more in presenting, is I really want to make something that's my own idea, which is a huge thing to say actually, because I think that's like a secret dream that I would never have said 6 months ago, but which my new agent has really instilled in me as not being unattainable and actually being something that I could do. And so, I think I never would have said that 6 months ago, but she's really given me that sort of like confidence. I'd love to do something that I've thought of myself. There are various things that I'm like working on in that regard. And the problem is like you say, and like, I think in a similar way, I'm not connected and I'm equally invested in all of them. Like one is a children's show and one is a play and one is like a documentary thing for adults. And like I'm invested in all of them. And they're nothing to do with each other. I think I struggle with that idea of having a lot of people will have a goal that they can work consistently towards. And I struggle with that aspect. I would love to do on the acting side, I really would like to do something now that's not grounded in our reality. It's like I did Doctors for 2 years, I did Dumping Ground for 11 years. Like everything that I've done has been very much like rooted in real life today and showing an aspect of real life to people that it can connect to, which is great, and I've loved it and it's interesting. But I would love to do something that isn't that, whether that's like something period or something fantasy or something that's like more world building, whereas I've always just been in a version of our reality. So I'd love to do something like that. And I still would like to go and do some theatre. I haven't done any theatre since I was 8. And I would also almost like to do it just to see if like I can and if I like it. I don't know if I like it. I liked it when I was 8, but you know, I liked a lot of things when I was 8. Maybe I'm not so into now. So, you know, it's hard, isn't it? Like you say, it's hard when you have a lot of ideas.